Corey, we are finally going to get to see it. We've gotten a couple games of James Harden and Kevin Durant together, and they looked pretty good. And they've looked really good those last couple of games. Now Kyrie Irving comes in, the big three together in Brooklyn. How do you see that fitting together?
I think it's going to be very dangerous for the Eastern Conference, for the NBA in general. The question to me is who's going to play point. And I think it's going to be James Harden because Kyrie, he's one of, you have three of some of the best isolation guards in basketball playing together, right? But they all know how to score different ways. I've been very surprised to see James Harden being such a great passer, even though I know he did that in Houston, playing alongside KD. I mean, the assists, he's racking up these assists that are just beautiful. He's so unselfish, and I think that's going to lend itself very well to that Nets team. And I think Kyrie is going to be able to get his buckets and in different elements as far as being able to shoot open three ball, or like I said, in a one-on-one ISO. But the whole offense for me runs through James Harden as the point, and then Kevin Durant as their guy, the number one guy for sure. What do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Durant is your alpha. He is still the guy taking the shot at the end of the game if you can set it up that way. Like, he's the guy you want. I think this can work. I think they'll trade off a little bit handling the ball, but I think it can work. What I'm really curious about fit-wise, I think offensively they're going to be really good. I am curious. Look, they're in a honeymoon period, and you're right. The ball is flying around for them those last couple of games. The ball movement's been great, setting up Joe Harris, who, if Joe Harris is hanging on your weak side, and you've got to focus on these other guys, you've got problems. It's not going to be easy to defend them. I'm curious, though, in like 2 months, when it's Kyrie Irving off the ball because they're running the Harden-Durant pick and roll, is he moving to open spaces or is he sulking in the corner? And I think the same question is legitimate about James Harden, who, look, in Houston when he didn't have the ball a lot, he was with ball-dominant guards and he would sulk. He would just kind of coast through plays. I want to see what this looks like when they get through their honeymoon period. But I think the fits can be really good, and I think their offense is going to be absolutely elite. I don't know how you defend. Milwaukee's a good defensive team that had no answer for two of them on Martin Luther King Day.
Yeah, and what you said, I think, is a really interesting point, right? So after James Harden shot that three ball, which, he doesn't miss open threes. I was shocked that he missed that late in the Bucks game. He got his own rebound, and then guess who he found? Kevin Durant for an open three look again. And that's the whole thing, is there's just too much firepower on this team. When you're talking about a shootout late in the game, who's going to take out the game, close out the game? Who's better than the Nets? I think of LeBron's clutch DNA. I think of the Warriors as far as being able to come back kids this season. But my money's on the Nets. If James Harden has an open look, and then the second option is Kevin Durant, and then the third option is Kyrie,
yeah,
come on.
And they're really good already, and they're going to be great at this. They're going to hunt mismatches because nobody can match up with them, right? Like, nobody's going to have enough guys to go, I've got this. Nobody's got three guys to defend them. Nobody. So now we can run pick and rolls. We can hunt mismatches. They did this really well, especially when Drew Holiday was out. Poor Pat Connaughton and Dante DiVincenzo just got roasted for a stretch because they're going to hunt out the mismatches. And that's something they can do late in games because you're not going to have enough guys. And even if you find a way to collapse on everything, again, Joe Harris is over there on the wing, and we're just going to kick it out to him, and he doesn't miss from three. This is going to be a really tough team to defend night in and night out. They've just got so many scoring options.
Well, one thing I think about the Nets is also, it's very important to bring up, is before they had Karis LeVert coming off the bench, who could have started in any NBA team. And as we see, his numbers were incredible this season coming off the bench. They now lack that coming off the bench. But I do think they can learn from the Lakers, and where you have LeBron managing minutes, right? Anthony Davis and LeBron, when they're together, it's just, exceptional basketball. And then LeBron goes to the bench, Anthony Davis takes over the team, and they just have a great little trio with him, Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell, right? I think you're going to see the same type of thing with Brooklyn, where, you're going to have all three of those stars on the court at the same time, but then you let KD sit a little bit. Now it's just James Harden, Kyrie. Then you let Kyrie sit a little bit. Now it's James and KD. I think you're going to have this really interesting a mixed match of, hey, you have all three of your biggest weapons in the game when you need to close out a game, maybe when you want to start a game, but then you can strategically deploy them to make sure that second unit, which has now a serious, in my opinion, a serious lack of depth now, without Allen and without, I know he was starting, but just generally without LeVert, now you have more options with those big three.
You do. You have a lot more options. You can also stagger it to just ones out there. Like, that's the thing. I want to rest Harden and KD for a while. I'm just going to hey, Kyrie, go get yours. Harden, I'm resting the other two guys. Go get yours for 5 minutes. Just go rack up points. And they're happy to do it. Like, they're like, oh, hey, I'll go get some points. They know where the bread is buttered. I think for Steve Nash, it's a matter of finding a rotation that keeps everybody happy as long as they can keep it happy. I'm not sure how. That's my one question about this thing. I'm not sure what the timeline is on this big three. We'll see how it goes. But in the short term, I just don't know how you defend them.
Yeah, it's going to be a big problem for the Eastern Conference. Where do you think they stack up in the Eastern Conference?
Right near the top. I had Milwaukee coming out of this. I'm not convinced that they beat them in a 7-game series. Here's my question. Well, yes, they won on Martin Luther King Day, but their defense through these 2 games has not been good. They've just flat out outscored teams. Like we've talked about, their offense is going to be unstoppable until you get to the playoffs, and teams are going to find ways to slow it a little bit. There's things they're going to be able to do to take some actions away, at least slow the pace down. Are they going to be able to get the stops when they need to? I'm not convinced they can. They just traded away. Their defense wasn't that good. It was 23rd in the league the 8 games before the trade anyway. They were struggling, and then they just sent their best defender in Jared Allen out. They don't have rim protection really anymore. I'm not sure how much you can count on DeAndre Jordan in that role. I'm not sure they can defend well enough to beat Milwaukee or, frankly, Boston, who's played fantastic basketball this season. I'm also not convinced any one of those 3 teams is done tweaking the roster, and I'm really curious now to see how they try to adjust it. Can Brooklyn go find a wing defender or a backup center that really helps them? Where does Boston go? Where does Milwaukee go? I think they're all going to be now in an arms race to get past each other.
What about Philadelphia? There's a big glaring omission there.
I shouldn't leave them out the way they've been playing. Absolutely. Joel Embiid has been MVP level good so far.
He's been playing extremely well.
He has been, and when he is on the floor, their defense is elite. He is tough to stop offensively, and they're starting to come together. I think that there's a lot of potential there too. And again, Brooklyn has to be in the top of that mix though, right there, right? Like, you can't put them any lower than saying they've got a really good chance of coming out of this. I'm not sure if I'd pick any one of them as more than 50%. If I could take the field over any of them, I might take the field at this point.
Yeah, when we entered the season, I was thinking, okay, Brooklyn has the best bench in the NBA, and they have 2 all-stars, MVP caliber players in KD and Kyrie. They have to be one of my favorites in the Eastern Conference. And they started off strong, and then I think midway through, I was like, okay, well, yeah, I have questions about this Brooklyn team. I still think they're top 2 or 3. But now I think I have a little more questions of how that team's going to gel. Then they got, as we mentioned, that huge blockbuster trade. The bench now has questions for me. I'm like, I don't know if I'm a big fan of that bench now, but I do think, when you add James Harden, as we discussed before, what do you do with a 3-headed monster? And now I think they're doubling down on this idea is, yeah, maybe our defense isn't the best. Maybe our second unit isn't, as good as the Lakers, for instance, who I think has the best bench now in the NBA. But you can't stop us. You can't stop us. And even if we're going to do an arms race like you're talking about, you think Boston's going to put up 130 points? You think Philadelphia's going to put up 130 points? And even over the course of the 7-game series, like we talked about before, these guys are MVP level guys who know how to adjust their games. They have a first move, and then they have a counter, and they have a counter to the counter.
Yeah.
And even if you stop KD one night, game 2, Kyrie might go off. Game 5, James Harden might go off. And we saw that in the bubble playoffs where we had guys like, for Denver, Jamal Murray averaging 40 points a game, something crazy, and Jokic doing what he does. But it wasn't enough to overcome. But imagine if you had, at any given night, one of them could drop 50 over 7 games. Like, that in itself is just terrifying.
They are. Look, and in the NBA, talent wins out, right? At the end of the day, the team with the most talent, you've got to put it together right. You've got to do this, but all your dynasties, still Laker dynasty, Celtics dynasty, Spurs dynasty, LeBron's Heat, they were also probably the most talented or among the most talented teams in the league every time they won. It's not an accident. Brooklyn has the talent now. Brooklyn absolutely has enough talent to win it all. They're going to need some breaks to go their way. They're going to have to find a way to gel. They're going to have to find, like you said, find some space on the bench, or find some guys to come off the bench that work, to find some depth, to find some defense. But talent wins out, man, and they now have as much or more than anyone in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, another team that has a lot of talent that had a little bit of a rocky start is the Golden State Warriors. Now they're on a bit of a tear that they've actually overcome two 20-point deficits against the Lakers and the Clippers, LA's finest. So where do the Warriors sit for you in the Western Conference?
They're still a little bit middle of the pack. I mean, look, I'm not convinced that they could beat the Lakers or Clippers over 7 games, but you, Steph Curry is so much fun to watch. Like it is a joy to watch him play. The other thing you've got to remember, and I think that teams are remembering this the hard way and finding out, there are championships built on the Steph Curry, Draymond Green pick and roll, and they would normally have Klay Thompson or somebody working off the ball. Now it's Andrew Wiggins, a little bit of a step down. Nonetheless, that is an incredibly difficult play to stop because of Draymond's playmaking ability. We all know what Steph can do. If you make a mistake on him, he's just hit the game winner over Anthony Davis. He is going to make you pay. But when he hits that little pocket pass and you've got Draymond Green right at the nail, right in the middle of the free throw line, he's picking you apart. He's either scoring or he's finding the open guy or finding the cutter coming out of the dunker spot or whatever it is. His decision-making makes that so tough to stop. And even elite defenses like the Lakers struggle to stop it. They're going to be a handful when you get them in the playoffs. I don't think they can beat the elite teams 4 out of 7. But, man, they're good. And, by the way, it's just fun to have Steph Curry back, isn't it? Isn't it fun watching this guy?
Yeah, I mean, I love watching Steph Curry. I think with the Warriors, you're right in the sense of they're not defensively, they're just not there. They're dropping 30 plus points a quarter, in the first quarter. You just can't do that against a team like the Lakers, because it's one thing to come back 20 points once, right, in prime time. It's one thing to do it twice, but to build your whole livelihood off of coming back, being the comeback kids, that is not, and believe me, that's not an enviable position, right? So from my perspective, the Warriors just need to continue to improve, and they've done that, which, if you're a Warriors fan, that's an extremely hardening thing. Every time they get on the floor, they get better. Every 5 games, you're looking at this team, you're like, wow, this is a much better team than 5 games ago. And I think that's what Steve Kerr's whole idea was, right? You have a lot of young guys, the guys who want to prove themselves, new guys like Oubre, who are going to be playing critical roles for this team in the absence of Klay Thompson. And they got to find their identity with this team and somehow mold that in with the culture that is so strong in the Warriors organization. So that's kind of my take on them. I love how Draymond and Steph are bringing in these young guys and indoctrinating them. I think James Wiseman has the most enviable position for any young guy in the NBA, to be that talented and to be under a Hall of Fame coach and Steve Kerr, Hall of Fame players, and have direct leadership from these guys and still have the space and room to grow and make mistakes, but still have an ability to contribute at a high level. I mean, that's a dream. You look at a guy like Tony Parker, he had to sit for the first few years, in San Antonio's system. So it's interesting to see that James Wiseman gets to play and help this team get better and still get that learning and coaching. It's an amazing position to be in.
It is. Look, by the way, Curry's been playing so well, his name has come up in MVP conversations. It's really early to be discussing that in any serious way, but can you see that happening? I mean, that would be his 3rd as a point guard. That's Magic Johnson level stuff.
Look, Magic changed the game and Steph changed the game. Undeniably, Steph changed the game. So I think it's the level he's playing right now, it is amazing to watch. Like we've talked about before, I think the MVP needs to bring the team to a different place. Not just being a great scorer, not just be a great defensive player, but what do you mean to your team? And so far, what Steph Curry has accomplished in Golden State is pretty amazing. So if he can get that 7th ranking up and compete with LA and the Clippers, and turn that team that at the beginning of the season everyone wrote off after Klay Thompson, as injury, that in my mind would be MVP type performance.
Yeah, I think there's a sentimental thing too. I think voters will have that too. Like, man, we'd like to give it to Steph Curry to see him back, but you hit the nail on the head. They can't be the 7th seed. They're going to have to. I don't, especially in this year's NBA when we talked about it. It mentioned Joel Embiid before. He's certainly playing that way. Durant is there.
LeBron is playing at a high level.
I was about to say LeBron and probably Anthony Davis can be in this conversation. We haven't discussed Nikola Jokic, who's averaging a triple-double for the season right now.
He's playing incredible.
Yeah. If Denver moves up in the rankings, suddenly, in the standings, suddenly he looks better. Same with Curry. They just, if if they get into the top 4, it's a serious discussion with Curry. But if they're 7th, I don't know that he can win it in this field right now.
But I don't think he's worried about it. And
No.
I mean, maybe he is. Maybe that's an added thing. But the cool thing about, at least from what I understand about Steph Curry and the organization in Golden State, it's about winning championships. And that's why it's so much fun to root for the guy, because 1, he has so much fun on the court. And then 2, he's about the game. He's about the respect of the game, tradition, and winning championships and changing it for the next generation. Like, how cool is that? And he's chasing Ray Allen and Reggie Miller's records right now. This is such an exciting time for Golden State, and I'm excited to see this, hopefully, meteoric rise. We'll see.
I like rooting for guys who seem to be having fun playing the game. I know it's serious and intense, but the joy that Steph Curry has on the court that's just evident, it just makes you want to root for him. It makes you want to see him do well, because that's how you would like to imagine yourself if you were in that position.
Yeah, I don't want to be 20 points down against LeBron at any given point in my life, but yeah, it's a very enviable position to be in. But we'll see what happens.